The Prophecy Club, a nationwide television program, a nationwide radio program. The Prophecy Club also hosts approximately 40 major city meetings per month. Our mission is to inform Christians of current events that confirm Bible prophecy, expose the evil devices of Satan, warn believers what is coming to America, challenge people to stop sinning and turn to Jesus with all their heart, and to provide a platform for Christian speakers to be heard.
It's a bald-faced lie, using the positions of power and authority in our own government. The greatest oil field in the world is at the southwest end of the Dead Sea. He said, son, you must warn this nation.
And now your host for the Prophecy Club, Stan Johnson.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club, where we study and research Bible prophecy. This is going to be tape 2 out of a 2 of 2 tape. In other words, last night we made tape 1. Tonight, this is going to be tape 2 in the double set series. And the title of this video set is The Occult in Your Living Room. And our speaker tonight is going to be talking about how he was an ex-Satanist high priest. He will expose the subtle devices used to lure people into witchcraft and Satanism. He says that he can take an average-sized box and walk through most Christians' homes and fill it with occult and satanic materials that they've collected and don't even realize that they are. He gives you his opinion about the evil behind the Ouija board, astrology, tarot cards, psychics, movies, video games, Teletubbies, Pokemon, and a whole bunch more. You'll discover the evil behind symbols you see every day. Will you help me welcome Stephen Dollins?
Thank you. We're gonna continue to carry on our research and our study and look at how the United Satanic Front has been actually getting our children inducted into Satanism and witchcraft worship. And remember that we covered in the last session, we covered in a lot of the things about Pokemon, and we saw that a lot of things in Pokemon we also saw in witchcraft. Now we're going to look at a subject that covers paganism, and it's in the form of a toddler's show, and it's called Teletubbies. Now, the sound, when the children hear this sound on TV, it's time for Teletubbies, it's time for Teletubbies. Hundreds, literally hundreds of toddlers run to their television set, and they plop down in front of that TV set to watch 1 hour of 4 roly-poly creatures go through their everyday routines. And, you know, one of the things that I did is I actually sat there and well, I had to actually make myself watch it, but I actually sat there and watched about 4 or 5 of these shows. And the thing that appeared to me the most and really stuck out the most in my mind was this one thing. There were no mommy and daddy Teletubbies in the movie, in the program. They're never presented that way. In fact, we're told that these are babies, high-tech babies. Now remember that I told you that it doesn't make any difference what I say, it's what their own material says. Well, I brought with me tonight actually a statement by Ann Wood, and this is their creator at British Broadcasting Company, because this thing started out as being a BBC production, British Broadcasting Company, and then America picked it up with PBS and started putting it on PBS. And Ann Wood says this: they are babies, technological babies. Like children, they also imitate what they hear, so they will attempt to speak like the narrator and sometimes like the voice trumpets. The Teletubby world is a full of pretty flowers, rabbits, warm hugs, and high-tech marbles, but it's also completely void of parental guidance. And the one thing that's the mystery about the whole show is that your toddler sits in front of the TV watching these roly-poly creatures that look like aliens, and the whole mystery is to find out or to try to figure out which one of the Teletubbies television screens, because that's why they're called Teletubbies. They have a television screen in their stomach. which one of those Teletubby creatures will actually be the one that a clip about children will actually show on that television screen. And you notice one thing that you'll see is if you'll watch that program that every one of those clips are about children. No parents in those clips either. So what are they actually saying? Well, when you look at the program, it looks innocent enough. But I want to point out something to you. I want to point out a couple of things here first before we get started. Number one, the most prevalent actual character in that program is a baby-faced son. And I mean this son actually has an animated baby's face. And every time that the Teletubbies do something that the son likes, it'll smile at them, grin, giggle. But every time that they do something that it doesn't like, it'll frown at them as if it's really getting angry. And it seems to put fear in the Teletubbies. At some points in the program, the Teletubbies will even rebel, and the sun gets really angry. And also, around the sun, it starts to really glow. In other words, like the flames around that sun start to get hotter, as if he's really getting mad and angry. The other thing is that out of the ground comes what's called a voice trumpet. In other words, this trumpet comes up out of the ground. It's actually a voice horn that comes up out of the ground, and it announces everything that the Teletubbies are to do. It's time to play. It's time to eat. It's time to sleep. It's time to go. Everything that they do is announced and directed by that voice trumpet. Not a mother and dad. Not grandparents. Not aunts and uncles. No parental guidance whatsoever. But yet we're told that these are babies. Remember, Ann Wood said these are high-tech babies. And Andy Davenport, he's the scriptwriter for this program, says this: children are the same the world over. They grow, they learn language, they learn to talk, to think the same wherever they grow up. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't particularly believe that particular statement. And the reason for that is, if I don't want my child believing the same thing that another child believes in another country if they're serving a different God, or if they're going against parental authority, or if they're going against any kind of guidance whatsoever, I don't want my child thinking the same as that child. She also goes on to say that we have to quit bogging down our children with values and morals and standards to the point to where they don't understand or that they feel out of place. Now, these characters are actually actors in costumes, and they are taught to walk like toddlers, talk like toddlers, play like toddlers, even eat like toddlers, so that your toddler watching them will identify with them. And so everything that they watch these Teletubby toddlers do, now that becomes their role model, and they try to imitate that. And I don't know if you have children that watch Teletubbies or not, but I mean, when they're glued to that TV set, you can talk to them. They don't hear a word you're saying. It's almost like they're mesmerized. That's their favorite ones. You hear them giggle and laugh and everything else, and mom and dad sit there and go, oh, that's such a good program because, you know, it keeps my child entertained. Sure, it's entertainment. But don't we know that witchcraft is also entertaining? And lovable alien-like creatures, now these are played again by real people, and Teletubbies, in Teletubby land, everything is supplied for them. Not by moms and dads, grandparents, aunts and uncles. Everything is supplied by them by this baby-faced son and by this voice trumpet. In fact, they have Teletubby custard, they have Teletubby toast, and there's even a comical vacuum cleaner named Nunu. And it goes around and makes the Teletubbies laugh. And so it looks real innocent. And the Teletubbies may be fantasy creatures in a fantasy world, but young toddlers pick up everything that they do. In other words, they watch that and they identify with that. And in his book, All of Our Children Learning, Dr. Benjamin Bloom, the father of outcome-based education, states this: the purpose of education in the schools is to change the thoughts, feelings, and actions of students. Now think about that for a minute. Just stop and think about what that statement just said. Now let's turn that around and listen to what it says to you individually. The purpose of education and the schools is to change the thoughts, feelings, and actions of my child. Where are those thoughts and actions supposed to be changed? At home, not the schools. We don't want the schools changing the thoughts and feelings of our children. That's what makes them special. That's what makes them unique. You know, I don't want school, I don't want my child to come home and say, oh, I can't laugh anymore because I learned in school that's against authority, you know, that sort of thing. So I don't want the schools, and I'm sure you don't want the schools, actually taking over and doing that. But how many know that that's exactly what the school system has done? In fact, a book we're going to talk about a little later, Harry Potter, there are many, many schools who are now requiring that for required reading in elementary schools. And it's nothing more than unadulterated witchcraft. So when we look at this thing, again, on the surface, it looks real enticing because it's entertaining. And the Teletubby world is the best attempt to touch preschoolers with the seeds of this New Age ideology. Because now you start to see that we have man-made gods because we have the sun, okay, and in any pagan culture, the sun has always been worshipped as a god. And example, winter solstice on December 19th, 1991, and now I actually have the pamphlet that they sent out, and here's what it is. And on December 19th, 1991, a public elementary school in Portland, Oregon, replaced their traditional Christmas party with a solstice festival, and here's what their printed program was entitled, Celebrate the Return of the Light. And it pictured the sun god and the moon goddess. Who is the moon goddess? We talked about that the last session, Diana. She's the goddess of the moon, and she's the highest witchcraft god, okay? And it said, pictured the sun god and the moon goddess, and here's what the events read. Listen to this. Each student will partake of the sun and moon cake before entering the auditorium, where they will seat themselves according to their astrological signs. Chanting will begin. Then it goes on to say, the sun god and moon goddess will enter with attendants, and then dancers and drummers will enter. Barcode children and animal spirits. And you can I only leave that to your imagination as to what that barcode children are. And then he says, it goes on, and the last one on there, it says, dancing in a circle together, feel free to hoop and holler. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that's pagan occult. And all the symbols that they have in there, the sun, the moon, those are all pagan symbols, and those are all occult symbols. We examined that. So we need to examine the official description of each Teletubby to find out exactly where it is. Now, first we're going to look at, this is Poe, okay, on the screen here. This is Poe, and it's the smallest Teletubby. And this is a girl. And she often jumps, and she jumps up and down to express her feelings of joy and enthusiasm and surprise. And the natural place for her to be is on her scooter going over the hills. So this is Poe, and she also makes a noise. She'll say quickly, 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 or slowly, slowly, slowly. And she also spends a lot of time on her own, again, away from parental authority or any kind of guidance from parents. Okay? So first of all, this is Poe. Now, I want you to notice that each Teletubby, remember we said that each Teletubby has a screen on their stomach, a television screen. Well, in order for you to be able to show a clip or for them to be able to show any kind of an image on that television screen, there has to be a receiver. And so the antenna on top of the head becomes that receiver. And isn't it odd that each one of these Teletubbies have a different antenna? In fact, my question was, why don't they all have the same antenna? In other words, if these are all babies, they all come from the same place, and they all seem to be basically in a Teletubby family, all of their own, then why don't they have the same antenna? Why are all those antennas different? Now, these symbols are simple shapes, but if you'll also remember, in the last session, we said that the circle represented the female womb. And in pagan cultures, it's also a powerful symbol of female serpentine power. In other words, fertility. And you notice on there that it also it symbolizes a spiritized mother goddess, because that's also in paganism referred to as the earth, symbolizing the earth. And to contemporary pagans and radical feminists, it's one of the primary feminine signs. So that's Poe, the littlest one, and the one with the antenna with the circle. Now keep that one in mind. The next one we're going to look at is called dipsy. We'll go back to that one. This is dipsy. And now you'll notice that dipsy has a different antenna, and I'm going to pull that down just a little bit so you can see the top of that. And you'll notice that when it comes up, it doesn't come up to a fine point, and it doesn't come up and round off. It comes up here, comes into a curve, and then rounds off again, clearly a phallic symbol. If you'll look at that real close, you'll see the phallic symbol. It looks like a phallus. And in every pagan culture, the rod has always represented a phallus. And that is a powerful symbol for male fertility. Pagan cultures, even on the Celtic fertility symbols, they have a holiday called Beltane, and a May Day, the maypole, symbolized by male power. That's exactly what this represents. Now, the interesting thing about dipsy is that when you start to look at it, this is the second biggest Teletubby, and he's also known for his distinctive steps and way of saying hello. So again, now this is going to really appeal to your toddler. Dipsy, Po. Then we look at the third one. And this is Lala. And if you look at Lala, this is the second smallest Teletubby. And she's by far the happiest and the most smiley of all the Teletubbies. And she loves to dance. And she loves to sing. And her favorite word is nice. But now we start to look at the antenna on Lala, and look what's happened. Here we have the male symbol, or I'm sorry, the female symbol of the circle, and it doesn't just break off and go separate. It goes from the female symbol right into the male phallic symbol. So you'll look at that, and you see as it comes up, it curves around, forms the circle, and then comes up and forms the rod. And now again at the top, when you see this, you can see clearly that it looks like a phallus. Then we come to the last one, the fourth one, and the fourth one is the most interesting of all. And you don't know how hard it is to say the names of these little things, because I mean I had to sit there and watch these things. Okay, so this is Tinky Winky. I said it. Okay, Tinky Winky. And he's by far the most biggest Teletubby, and he's the gentlest of the Teletubbies. In fact, he's so gentle, he has everything in a bag. And you know, the one thing that I noticed about, and in the episode that I watched on this, he loves wearing a smaller little white ballet skirt. And he loves to dance in a white tutu or ballet skirt. And I looked at that and I said, what in the world is that supposed to represent? And then it dawned on me, because I looked up here and I saw this antenna. Remember that when we saw in the last session, we looked at the occult symbols, we looked at the pagan symbols, and we said the triangle was a representation of earth, wind, and fire, the basic elements of all witchcraft. We also said that it was a powerful spell-casting symbol. But if you notice this now, we have a triangle that's pointing down, and the triangle is in multiple forms. And it's pictured in alchemy as a sexual rite. In fact, in Buddhism, it's referred to as a sex sign. And isn't it strange that the gay and lesbian community have now taken the upside-down triangle as their logo, their symbol? And they've also adopted the color purple, which is the color that Tinky Winky is. And then it dawned on me, that's why he dances in a ballet skirt. I know it sounds funny, but I mean, you look at this thing and, you know, it looks real innocent, but when you look at it on the surface, it looks really fun, and it looks really, you know, like, oh, there's nothing wrong with them, they're just cute. But when you look underneath of what they're really trying to say, Marilyn Ferguson, the author of The Aquaric Conspiracy, a New World Order blueprint for changing people's perception, She states this, listen to this. In order to teach children of tomorrow a new perception of reality, we must make symbols and their evolving and politically correct meanings more fun and familiar than the home-taught words, values, and meanings. And so now what they're saying is they're teaching your toddler through symbols. And if you go even further, Andy Davenport, the scriptwriter, goes further to say that we've been bogging down our toddlers and our young people with all these values and morals and standards for too long, making them feel out of place if they're in a different environment. And then he goes on to state what that different environment is. Listen to this. He says that if a child grows up in a home where mom is a woman and dad is another woman, that we should teach them that it's okay. And if a child grows up in a home where dad is a man and mom is another man, that it's okay. That we can't let them feel out of place. That we have to teach them that this is a different symbol and that everything is the way it should be, and that that kind of value and that kind of standard should be looked at as being acceptable and okay. And so what is the true message behind Teletubbies, these roly-poly creatures that our toddlers watch? That gay is okay. Now we start to see that these things are taken on a different light. Now we start to see that they have actually found a way to make evil look cute and take God's principles and make them look ridiculous. And that's what they're trying to portray to our toddlers. So the next time your toddler sits in front watching Teletubbies, remember that there's a message being portrayed to him or her, and it's not a good one. Remember that the message is gay is okay. And lifestyle learning back in 1973, this lifelong process of socialization, they said it would start soon after birth with community training sessions for parents, and then they're supposed to teach the parents how to teach their children. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go to a class where I feel like if I'm a parent, I don't need to go to a class for somebody to teach me how to be a parent. And I know a lot of parents out there don't feel that way either. But this is this new schooling that's coming about. And I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, it's on the rise. Because if you don't think that witchcraft, paganism, and Satanism is on the rise, you need to open up your eyes. I believe, and this is my own opinion, but I believe that the New Age religion, or the new religion when the Antichrist comes into power, is not going to be a New Age movement at all. In fact, it's not even going to be a worship back of nature. I believe that the new religion is going to be the old religion, and it's going to be prevalent upon the earth, and it's going to be nothing more than return to witchcraft, the practice of magic and symbols. Because see, we're all grounded in symbols. Now I've seen witchcraft packaged in many different ways, but never so cleverly as this one. This is Harry Potter. And this is the book right here. This is the first book that was out. Now, Harry Potter, actually this is a craze that came out just before this last Christmas. In fact, just before Christmas 1999. And it amazed me that I was seeing more reports that children were asking for this book and the series in this book more than they were asking for toys. And I thought, that's kind of unusual. Because here, the Christmas before, the biggest thing was what? Furbies. Everybody had to have one. Okay? There, one time, you know how Christmas goes. One time it might be Power Rangers, and your child has to have one because everybody's got one. And then there might be Pokemon because every other kid's got one now. And now it's gone to Harry Potter. And what we need to do is we need to look at Harry Potter, because I want to tell you something. This is nothing more than unadulterated witchcraft put in the form of a child's book. And if your child reads this book, he is receiving a curse. And if you read this book to your child, he or she is receiving a curse. Because I want to tell you something. The spells that are in this book are very real spells. They're not something somebody came up with. This is written actually by a British authoress named J.K. Rowling. And J.K. Rowling is a professed witch in England. She wrote these books, and she said that she sees things through her mind's eye. And how many know that's a New Age concept? Remember about supposedly having a psychic eye in the middle of your forehead, and you're supposed to be able to see into the psychic world and receive all kinds of information and things of supernatural ability to be able to share those things with others through your mind's eye. She says she sees things through her mind's eye and then writes them down, and that's how she came up with this book and this character, Harry Potter. Now, she also goes on to say that she was going to actually write 4 books and then stop. She actually had the plan for 4 books. But then she said that she had such a popularity rise in the books of Harry Potter when the very first one came out that she said that she decided to do a 7-book series. And there are 3 books now that have been released and are actually published and out on the market right now. And there are 4 more to come. And now I just read about a week ago in a magazine, she was doing an interview with a magazine, in fact it was Life magazine. She said that the 4 to come were going to be even darker than the first. So there's 4 more to come. Praise God. We're always looking for them, aren't we? Now, the interesting thing about this is if you go into bookstores looking for Harry Potter, good luck. Because most of the time they're sold out. They're that popular. And what we need to do is we need to look at Harry Potter and see exactly what this is. So let's examine Harry Potter and the story of Harry Potter. Now, this is actually the second cover of the book. What you're seeing up here, this book is actually the first cover that was printed in the United States. But the first cover, the actual first cover, was actually printed in England. And what they did was they actually changed the cover because the British people were putting up an uproar, and they said that they didn't want that cover on their book because these right here, where you see the diamond shapes, were actually pentagrams. And so there was something about that that allowed the British people to see there was something wrong about it. The other thing is that the very first book was called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Then all of a sudden they changed it to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And now if you'll look at there, you'll see all kinds of symbology. Take a look at Harry Potter and you'll see the lightning bolt in the P. And we also stated in the last session that the lightning bolt was a symbol of Satan. Okay? So Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And now you see, over in this corner, here are demon dogs. Over down in here is a unicorn. There are several symbols because if you'll look closely in those pillars, if you could actually see them close up, you'll see faces in those pillars. And at the top here, okay, there's your triangles, and they've even got the triangles into here. And Harry is riding on a broomstick. And the premise of the story is this. Harry Potter is a boy who's a 12-year-old who his parents are killed in a car accident. And Harry survives that car accident. He was with his parents at a very, very, very young age. And now he's an orphan, and he's sent over to England to live with his aunt and uncle, who are horrible to him. In fact, they treat him like a nobody. Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read for you right off the book itself, because that'll help support what it is. Listen to this. Harry Potter has never played a sport while flying on a broomstick. He's never worn a cloak of invisibility, befriended a giant, or helped hatch a dragon. All Harry knows is a miserable life with the Dursleys, his horrible aunt and uncle, and their abominable son, Dudley. Harry's room is a tiny closet at the foot of the stairs, and he hasn't had a birthday party in 11 years. But all that is about to change when a mysterious letter arrives, a letter with an invitation to a wonderful place he never dreamed existed. There he finds not only friends, aerial sports, and magic around every corner, but a great destiny that's been awaiting him, if Harry can survive the encounter. Now, Harry is a nobody. He's living with his aunt and uncle, the Dursleys, and they have an abominable son named Dudley. And Dudley treats him like he's an outcast, doesn't accept him in part of the family at all. But Harry knows there's something about him that's very special. And he receives an invitation in the book. He receives an invitation by a giant that comes knocking on the door one day. And Harry opens up the door, and the giant has a message for him in the form of a letter. And you know what? It's an invitation that he join something. You know what that is? Hogwarts School of Wizardry and Witchcraft. And so Harry thinks, gee, why did I receive this invitation? I must be important. I must be special. And so Harry runs off from his aunt and uncle's home. He jumps aboard a train, and he goes to Hogwarts School of Wizardry and Witchcraft, where he learns how to cast spells, how to summon spirits, how to do hexes, how to form symbols. And you know what? So does your child. Because as I said before, the things that are in this book are in actual witchcraft books. This is in the form of a children's book. And you know what gives Harry his specialty? Harry was born, he was special, and he wonders why he receives that invitation. And Hogwarts begins to tell him why he was so special enough to receive the invitation to join his school. He tells Harry that Harry was in that accident, and that accident, by the way, the accident that killed his parents was a form of a lightning bolt coming down and destroying the car that they were in, blowing it up. But Harry survived. But he was also born and received from that accident a particular scar on his forehead. Look here. That's the scar right there on his forehead. Do you know what it is? A purple lightning bolt on his forehead. So now that's what makes him special, because with Harry's purple scar on his head, he now has psychic abilities, and he's able to do things that other people aren't able to do. And he knows things that other people shouldn't know. He knew things before, but he didn't know why. Now he's seen as very special. And you notice how that appeals to the child, because now the child begins to identify with Harry. How often is you talk about a child, and how often has a child mentioned about, gee, I just want to run away. Mom and Dad have strict rules too. I just want to run away. So he starts associating with Harry, because they can identify with that. And it makes it look as if you want to be a somebody, you can be just like Harry Potter. You can become a wizard too. There are a lot of books on the market about witchcraft, but I'm telling you, this is the one that's packaged in the latest form of a children's book. And the thing about it is that now a lot of parents are starting to read these books to their children, and now they're even getting into the story of Harry Potter. I'll tell you a true story. I was on the plane to Dallas. It's kind of a funny story, because, I mean, this is actually true. This is actually true. I was at the plane and getting ready to leave Dallas to go to Corpus Christi, which was I think about 45 minutes to an hour flight. And it was one of those twin-engine planes. And we went out to the bus. I mean, the bus took us out to the plane, and we sat there. We sat there. And we sat there. And we sat there because there was no crew. And they kept radioing back, we ought to have a crew. Somebody needs to fly the plane. We're supposed to leave. Oh, we were supposed to leave 30 minutes ago. And they radioed back saying, well, the crew's here, we just don't know where they are. True. So the crew's here, we just don't know where they are. So we're starting to, make jokes about, well, I better go look in the bar somewhere. They might be in there. But I looked over, and right away from me, there was a lady sitting here, an older lady, and then there was a younger lady, probably in her 20s, that was sitting on the other side of her. And the way they talked, I could only gather that was her daughter. The younger one was her daughter. But she was sitting there reading this hardback book. And I kept looking at that book because it looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. And I kept trying to get a good look at it, and I couldn't. And so she took it with her on the plane. Finally, the crew came out after about 45 minutes that we're supposed to take off. The crew finally came out, and after we told them, you know, that send them through a breathalyzer, you know, make sure before they got behind the wheel of that plane, you know, we took off, and we got to Corpus Christi, and I still kept, all the way down the flight, I kept trying to get a look at her. She was sitting right in front of me, but the chair was so high, I couldn't get a look at the book. I kept trying to look around, but I couldn't get a good chance at it. And so I said, I said, there's just something about that book that I recognize, but I can't place it. And when we landed in Corpus Christi, she got out, and she got ready to take off her seatbelt, and she stood up to get her things out of the overhead storage bin, and she put the book down on the seat. So, of course, I raise up and look down, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And it was amazing that somebody of her caliber and somebody of her age would be reading Harry Potter. Because I'm sitting there going, why in the world is she reading Harry Potter? This is a children's book. But again, the mysterious thing about this is now parents are starting to get into the story of Harry Potter. Not only are their kids identifying with Harry Potter, but the parents are too. And at grieving, I've had ladies come up and tell me, Christian women come up and tell me, at about 5 different cities that I've been to so far on the tour. And I mean, they have tears in their eyes. And I said, what's wrong? And they said, well, you remember when you talked about Harry Potter? And I said, yes. And they said, our children are being required to read that at their school. Required reading. And you sit there and you go, what in the world is going on? Librarians think it's great. Parents think it's great. Because now little Billy, for the first time, is reading a book. Little Sally has never shown any interest in any kind of literature at all. Praise the Lord. She's spending about 6 hours to 8 hours a day reading Harry Potter. Isn't it wonderful? Sure it is. It's witchcraft. It's exciting. And your children begin to identify with Harry. And the darker that it gets in the story, the more they start to identify with Harry. Take a look at the picture again. Look really close and look and see if you see other symbols in here. Now, this is more of a blown-up type version of that. On the hardback book, it actually shows the stars even better. I don't know whether the camera can zoom in on that close enough or not. On the hardback book, it actually shows it better. And the stars on this are actually inverted. The stars on this are actually inverted. So what it means is that it shows satanic symbols right there on the cover of the book. And you think that's by coincidence? Absolutely not. They know what they're doing. J.K. Rowling knows what she's doing, because remember, she's a professed witch. Here's the second book. It's called Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Now, audience, what has Satan always been symbolized as? Serpent, right? Now, how many see the serpents in the cover on this book? How many see the one wrapped around the pole here? There's one here, one down in this cave, one here coming out. How many see the one in the pole over here? There's the head, there's the eye wrapped around that pole. Here's Harry Potter, bless his heart. Now you can see his purple lightning bolt scar right there on his forehead. It's what gives him his ability, his psychic ability. And Harry is holding on to a phoenix, which is a mythical bird and a big symbol of reincarnation. And you notice it's called And the Chamber of Secrets. In this story, now Harry discovers the secret of it all. And listen to what it is. Harry discovers that his parents' murder, because it wasn't an accident at all, his parents' murder was caused by an evil wizard called Lord Voldemort. And Lord Voldemort now is after Harry, because Harry is destined to become a very powerful wizard. And Lord Voldemort wants to be the very best powerful wizard. And he hoped at the time when he destroyed his parents, Harry's parents, that he would also destroy Harry too, so that he didn't reach his destiny. But now that he finds out that Harry is right there at the school and learning these things, and that he's destined to become a very powerful wizard, all Lord Voldemort wants to do now is destroy Harry. And now it becomes exciting. Now your child can't wait for the next book, because is Harry going to survive? Is Harry going to find out his destiny? Is he ever going to reach his destiny? What's going to happen to poor Harry? What's going to happen to all the friends that Harry's met? By the way, at the school of Hogwarts Wizardry and Witchcraft, Harry's friends are all witches and wizards. And in the book, there's a message that goes out to your child. You know what that is? That the witches are the good guys, the parents are the bad guys. Portraying us, and I mean Christian parents, to look like we're a bunch of fools. That we are cruel, and that our rules are too strict. And now Harry is treated with his best family, and his best family now are witches. Practicing witches. Isn't that amazing? And again, now your child begins to really identify with it, and it gets exciting. Now I want to read to you what she states, meaning J.K. Rowling. Here's what she actually states. In that same interview, here's what she says, and I think this gives it away. She says, the idea that we could have a child who escapes from the confines of the adult world and go somewhere where he has power, both literally and metaphorically, really appealed to me. And you know what? It also appeals to your child. Because how many times has your child, have you ever asked your child, am I too strict? Do we have too many rules around here? You know what their first words are going to be? Yes, you do. You know, that's their first reaction. You sure do. And how many of us can identify when we were kids? We all reached that point where we wanted to run away. We thought there might be something better. And that starts to really get into your child's psyche, in other words, their mind, and starts to implant an idea. And that idea is that you can be a Harry Potter, you can be important, you can be special. All you need to do is become a wizard. All you need to do is give yourself to the dark side, and you can be important too. Now remember, I told you there are 3 books that are out to be published. I understand the 4th one's about to be released. And remember that J.K. Rowling, the authoress, said that the next 4 to come out are to be even darker than the first 3. If that wasn't enough. So that's the 2nd book. Here is the 3rd book that's out. It's called Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And here is Harry, and here is one of his little friends, and this is a witch, and she's riding on the back there. You see where their pointed hat. Here down in the corner here is evil Lord Voldemort. This is the one that's out to kill Harry. And Harry is riding upon a griffin, which is a mythical bird that's supposed to be half horse, half lion, and half eagle. And again, this is a witchcraft symbol, an occult symbol. And I ask you parents, do you think somebody just came up and said, oh, let's just throw that on there? If they didn't know what it meant. If they didn't know that the whole ideology of this new schooling is to induct our children with symbols. Instead of teaching them with words and morals and values, we're going to teach them with symbols. We're going to teach them to identify with symbols. I want to read to you right here out of the pages of this book, because page after page brings the reader into timeless battle with the forces of good and evil. In fact, Hogwarts tells him, Harry, that there is no such thing as good and evil. There's just power. And the amount of that power determines how good you are or how evil you are. Think back to Star Wars. That's the same message. Exactly the same message. Here's from Hogwarts theology, right from the pages of the first book here, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Listen to this. Here's Professor Snape, and he's the one who teaches potions. And he says this: I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind and snaring the senses. A centaur's view on astrology. He says, we have sworn not to set ourselves against the heaven. Have we not read what is to come in the movement of the planets? Or have the planets not let you in on that secret? Once introduced to the occult, the child begins to crave more. That's designed to do that. It's not by accident. It's not by coincidence. It's designed to do that. They easily find it in their neighborhoods and schools, because I'm telling you, every bookstore now you can walk into and ask them if they have Harry Potter. Most of the time they will. But the very first book is the one that's hard to find. You can't find copies of it because parents have bought it, children have bought it, and sadly to say, aunts and uncles and grandparents, I've talked to several of them that have bought that book for their children or grandchildren to read. Can you imagine reading this as a bedtime story? And then having your child go to sleep, dreaming about witches and evil Lord Voldemort, and wanting to have a lightning bolt on their forehead? And we wonder why our kids have bad dreams. Could it be the stuff we're reading to them or telling them before they go to bed? And you can identify things because now, even in big bookstores, Barnes & Noble, by the way, I was watching on CNN one night, about 2 weeks before I went on tour. How many know if you watch CNN sometimes, especially late at night, you can pick up some good stuff. And I was just happened to watch CNN, and I was watching for sports stuff, and they came on and they showed this news clip. And what the news clip was talking about Harry Potter and how big a phenomenon it was. And they were doing interviews with librarians who were saying that it was just great because now children were taking their time and actually reading material. And one librarian says, I don't care what it is. I don't care what it portrays. I don't care what kind of ideology our children get, just as long as they're reading. So in other words, she's saying, I don't care if it's witchcraft. If they're reading it, that's great. And they were doing interviews with parents. And the parents on there said, oh, I think it's just wonderful. My child just never thought about picking up a book before. And we tried to get him or her interested in books before, and they just were boring. I'm telling you, Harry Potter is not boring. To them, it is not boring. It must not be boring to parents, too, if many parents are starting to read it. And it's fascinating. And on this same clip, they actually showed a Barnes & Noble bookstore. And they said that outside of this bookstore, they were having a Harry Potter party. Try to say that 3 times. Harry Potter party. And in this party, you were to come dressed as your favorite character. And they showed the camera going down the line of all these kids standing with their parents outside of this bookstore waiting to get into this party. There was not a book signing party. I mean, the authoress wasn't there. There was no thing special about it except that it was just a Harry Potter party. Something that you could go and celebrate your favorite character. And they were all outside dressed in their favorite costumes. And you know what? The most prevalent character of all was Harry. And the way that you could tell that is that here were hundreds of children, boys and girls, who had painted lightning bolts purple on their foreheads. And we look at it and we say, that's innocent? Oh, that's just a children's book? That's just a story? That's not real. And you know what? We sit there and probably tell our children the same thing. Honey, you don't have to worry. Those people don't exist. That's not real. There's nothing in witchcraft. That's just on TV. See, that's what I thought before I really got into it, was that witches were just on TV. And I had to find out for myself. I mean, I was just determined to find out if there was any such thing as witches and any such thing as magic. That's what got me into deeper and deeper into it until I finally ended up into the darker side of it and got to the highest form, which is Satan worship. Praise God, came out of that. And our children are being fascinated and surrounded by peers, because peers are now actually giving peer pressure onto our children to get involved in these things. Now, what do I mean by that? Listen. Let's say, for instance, your child doesn't have Pokemon, but the boy next door does. Now, he thinks that Pokemon is just the greatest thing to come along. And he plays it religiously, okay? And now your son or your daughter is associating with that child, and your little 2-year-old or 3-year-old, 4-year-old, however old they are, is now getting peer pressure from that other child saying, how come you don't have it? Don't your mom and dad love you? My mom and dad loved me. They bought me Pokemon. I wanted Harry Potter. They went out and got me all 3 books. Your mommy and daddy must not like you. Now, what's that playing in your child's head? So now you can understand why they come to you, and for the first time, you're wondering why they're asking you for Pokemon. You're wondering why all of a sudden they're interested in something called Harry Potter. Because they're receiving peer pressure. Other kids are reading it and they're sharing it. You know, kids love to share information with each other all the time. I mean, sometimes you have a child in the room, you can't get a word in edgewise. You know, and they love to talk and they love to share things with each other. And if Harry Potter is what they're sharing with each other, that's what they're doing. Harry Potter is nothing more than unadulterated witchcraft in the form of a child's book. That's one of the dangers that are out there right now, trying to infiltrate the minds of our children. And they're doing a good job of it, because I'm going to tell you something. This is on the bestseller list as the #1 children's book. You think about Tom Sawyer and all the stuff that we used to read. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to give my age away, hopefully. But you read all the things that we used to read as children, and then you look at the things that our children have in front of them that they have the opportunity to read. And I'm telling you, when you look at that, and you look at that as you know, the surface of it, and you look underneath that, and you're sitting there going, wait a minute, we never had this when I was a kid. We never had witchcraft books when I was a child. You know, but these things are out there, and that's what they're designed to do, is to get our children interested and inducted into witchcraft and Satanism by making it look fun. And the whole message is, it's fun to be a witch. It's fun to be a wizard. You can be important. You can be to the point to where you don't need mom and dad. You don't need grandparents. You don't need aunts and uncles. You are a master. And as we did in the last session, isn't that what everything that we've been studying so far gone to show? Isn't that been the underlying message? The child becomes the master. You're the master, you become the ruler of your home. So now we wonder why our children rebel, and why it seems like, my goodness, little Sally just got really obstinate lately. Everything we tell her is no. Now we wonder why. Because they're being taught to say no. They're being taught to rebel against parental authority, that parents aren't needed, that the child can handle it on their own. Now, our children spend about 16 to 24 hours a day playing games. And the most prevalent games that are played are actually referred to as video games, meaning that they play them on the computer or they play them in the arcades. Some of them are funny, some of them are good, and some of them are like this one. Look at this. This one's called Blood Omen, Legacy of Cain. Isn't that pretty? And you look up here and it says the epic role-playing game. Remember that we said that in most of these games the object is role-playing. And I will remind you that role-playing means that the player actually becomes a part of the game. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a child, even when I was a teenager, we were playing things like Space Invaders and Asteroids and things like that. We didn't have the 3D screens that we have now. And now with the introduction of Nintendo 64 system that was released October 1996, and with the new Sega Saturn and the brand new and called Dreamcast system, because the Dreamcast system has a really high resolution screen. And what they've actually been able to do with the high technology of video that we have now is they can make fantasy look real. And I'm going to tell you, what I did was I actually sent off for promos of these games and played them on my computer. God forgive me. But that's how you find out. That's how you know. You have to look for it yourself. And I sent off for these promos, and you know, the dangerous thing about it is now with the internet system where we can actually have so easy access to websites, there are websites that your child or your teenager can tap into, and they can actually get demos of this game and play it right there on their computer. But it's one of those try before you buy type things. And I sent off for some of these, and they sent back the disc. It actually came back in a CD-ROM disc. And you actually put it into your computer and then play it. And then what I did was took pictures on my computer. I have a program that I can go in and actually take pictures of the video screen as it's playing. So what I'm going to show you now are some of those video screens. And again, I ask you to ask the Lord to sharpen your discernment so that you see what you think you see in the video screens. Now, first of all, let's look at this first one. This is Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, epic role-playing game. Now, what happens is, in this game, you are a 600,000-year-old vampire. See his teeth? You're a 600,000-year-old vampire. You've been destroyed by the bad townspeople because you've been going around biting their necks and sucking all the blood out of them. Bad townspeople. Should be slapped. So they go out and kill you, destroy you, and you're in the grave, and all of a sudden, someone comes along with a book of incantations and spells. And there's a reincarnation spell. And that's read over your grave. And so now, guess what? You're back to life. And it's the whole premise of this thing is that now you're the vampire, and you're with your sword and your teeth and your glaring eyes, you go after the townspeople. This is a game of revenge. And I'm going to read to you right off the back of the box of this thing, because the advertisement alone is enough to see the occult elements. Now, listen to this. Here's what's on the back of the box of this particular game. It says, butcher villagers or turn them into festering pools of decaying flesh with one of 22 demented magics. It will take you more than 100 hours of adventure to destroy all those who damned you, but you'll get them. Every last bloody one. Now, there's a rating system, a mature rating system. Just like we have a rating system in movies, video games have a rating system also. And this game is M17, meaning that those that are under 17 are not supposed to be allowed to buy this particular game. You know what? It doesn't make any difference if your child is 5, 6, or 10. If they have the money in their hands, the clerk will sell it to them. And I hate to say this, but I will tend to believe, and I will bet you that 90%, at least 90% of parents don't know what their children bring through the front door of their own home. Because it's easy to go out and buy a CD. It's easy to go out and buy a game or a toy, and they put it in a bag, and they take it upstairs, and they play with it. And praise God, we all work for a living. And you know, your child comes in and wants to talk to you, and mom and dad is too busy working on their laptop, or they're, you know, doing work for the next day. And they say, honey, you know, don't bother mommy or daddy right now. Just go and play with your game. What are they playing with? We need to be aware of what our children are watching, what they're seeing, and what they're playing with. Because if it's these video games and things like that, because you know what this video game teaches? Two things. It teaches your child how to take revenge, and it teaches the player how to kill. So now let's imagine a 10-year-old playing this video game. What's he learning? What is the message that he or she is getting through the video game? Number one, that there is such a thing as magic and that it works. Number two, if someone does something to you, you do it to them. In Satanism, in the Satanic Bible written by Anton Szandor LaVey, one of the golden rules in there, one of the 9 satanic golden rules in there, says this: do unto others before they do it unto you. And so this is what these games are teaching our children and our teenagers, because these games are real popular with the teenage crowd. They go to the video stores and they pick up these games. They go to the arcade and they play them over and over and over again. Now, Sega has out for its Saturn system one called Nights into Dreams, and here's what the advertisement of that says. Listen to this. Nights brings you face to face both with your guiding spirits and your innermost demons. Well, praise God, that's what we all want. Final Fantasy IV, a game released in October 1996 for PlayStation, is complicated because it's complemented by the authors of the Next Generation Game magazine. Here's what Next Generation Game says. It says the setting for this game is marked Makatashi, the city of bright magic, and one of the characters is a good witch named Aerith. Do you think it's by coincidence they're putting witches, vampires, demons, wizards, and everything else that they can think imaginable in these video games? Because I'm getting ready to now expose some screens to you that you're actually going to see some of those things in. This is, again, a game of revenge. Here is another picture of that. And if you really want to get into game secrets, they have another a game that you can actually buy, or a CD-ROM, excuse me, that you can actually buy that's game secrets. All these games contain secrets. In other words, things that you can study and really get to where you can beat the system and win the game. And that's what these game secrets are. You look at this. This is official game secrets, Legacy of Kain. And you see the picture on there is enough to give it away. That's Legacy of Kain. Now I'm going to show you a screen here. The next one is a screen from a game called Hexen. I want you to look at it. I'm going to ask you, what do you see? What do you see? Okay, pentagram, right? Right here. Does anybody see the blood around the pentagram? There's just been a human sacrifice. There is the symbol of the serpent. See it? Here's the circle. This is Stonehenge. These are the stones, and then there's a stone going across the pillars. This is Stonehenge. How many know that Stonehenge was a very sacred place to the Druids? That's where human and animal sacrifice took place. Hate to tell you, but it still goes on. Okay? These are Druids that are around there, stretching their arms. And now what you're doing is you're zeroing in, that's what that box, you're zeroing in on the Druids. And you're trying to keep them from catching you and sacrificing you before you can get to this, which is the treasure. And over here, these are Druid gods. Those red that you see are their eyes. And again, I'm going to ask you, do you think they just came up with that game and said, hey, let's just throw that in there? It looks good. Let's just put that in the screen. Kids won't know what it is, but it looks good, it looks cool. We'll just throw that in. Next one is a screen from a video game called Doom. Now, remember we talked, in the last session, we talked briefly about the Columbine murders. And we said that the video that had been released, the new information is that there's been a video released of the 2 boys actually sitting there and talking about the planning of how they were going to go about doing the Columbine murders in Colorado. And you know where they got the idea from? A video game called Doom. And the way that the Columbine murders were carried out is exactly the way that it was carried out in this video game. Exactly. To the T. Because in this new video that's supposedly released, now I haven't seen the video myself, but I've talked to a couple of gentlemen who actually have seen the video or claim to have seen the video. And they said that one of the things they talked about on there was a video game that they played religiously day after day after day called Doom. And on the tape, they actually tell you that they repeat words over and over again, and one thing that they keep talking about all through this video with the interview that they're doing is Doom. Doom. This is the video screen. Now, remember I told you that what happened is I take pictures from this one program and then put them into, take pictures of the screen of the computer, and then what I do is I get them off and then run them into an overhead. Now, this came up so fast that I didn't get a chance to get the second screen. In other words, my computer wouldn't take the picture that quick. But here's what happens. Here's what I want you to see. Here's the star right here. Did everybody see that red star? That's just a regular star. In other words, if it were to stand up, it would be a 5-pointed star, but it would have the 2 points coming this way and 1 point up, like just a regular star. Okay? What happens is there's a creature or a form that comes out of the blackness here. There's a cave back there. Comes out of the blackness towards you. You shoot it with your gun, and this star actually all of a sudden just jumps up and goes up to the next screen. Now, if it were to stand up, it would be a 5-pointed star facing this way. But what actually happens is it actually backs up, and the star raises this way, which makes it 5-pointed star inverted, which is the universal symbol of all Satanist churches. And again, do you think they just put that in there by coincidence? Do you think someone just made the game and said, hey, let's just throw that in? We'd like that. Next screen is from a video game called Quake. Now, several things really interesting about this game. First of all, look what your counter goes to when you reach this screen. 666. And you notice up here some writing, a message that you get on the screen, and it says, you've got the pentagram of protection. Well, let's find out what that pentagram of protection is. Right here is a skull, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but there are horns actually going up and latching onto a bar up here. And this is the level. In other words, this is an opening that goes to the next level. If you can get past that, you're into the next level. So it's telling you, you've got the pentagram of protection for you to be able to get through there and go to the next level. What is the pentagram of protection? Well, there it is right there. The 5-pointed inverted satanic star, complete with the pentagram, circle around it. Everybody see that? So that's the first level. Then if you get past that, and you're able to go with the pentagram of protection, you enter the next level. And here's the next level. And now look what we have. That's that star that was laying down. Now it's up here. And now you see the pentagram, the 5-pointed inverted star. And this is real interesting down here because on this screen, it actually comes down and it shows you this. An N, an I, and a backward N. This is actually the spelling for an alternative metal band called 9 Inch Nails. And 9 Inch Nails has a lead singer named Trent Reznor. And Trent Reznor says that we represent the 9 Inch Nails, or we represent the nails that went into the hands and the feet of your God on the cross. And that's exactly what he says. In other words, we represent all that put Christ on the cross in a video game, on a screen. By coincidence? No. Because as you reach the level of this, not only do you see this, you also get to hear 9 Inch Nails do a song. And the song says, "Terrible Lie." Now, I won't tell you all of it because I don't want to even tell you what it is on camera because it's vulgar. But at the last part, it says, he made up a God and called it Christianity. And then he says, your God is dead and no one cares. And this is on a video game called Quake. And these video games, remember, are available to practically anyone. Next video screen I'm going to show you is from a game called Duke Nukem. Duke Nukem is actually a cartoon character and actually has a comic book also. And Duke Nukem, this particular screen has nothing to do with the idea of Duke Nukem, because Duke Nukem is a soldier. But this screen somehow or another got in the game. And I want you to see something here, because it's very interesting. I want you to be able to see this. You're in a church in this particular screen. You're in a church. And I want you to see this. Right up here, here are the stained glass windows. Now, you can't see it real clearly, but if you'll look closely, you'll see an image that looks like Jesus on the cross. There are the thorns, okay, on the stained glass window. Now, on the back of that wall is a cross. See that? There it is right there, and then it comes right here, and that's where the tips going across stop. It's a black cross. It's not doing anything. It's just on the wall. And right down here is an interesting piece, because this is a gray screen, and if you'll look closely, it looks like what appears to be the Shroud of Turin. In other words, supposedly the face of Jesus that was supernaturally embedded in the cloth when he was wrapped up in the cloth and laid to rest in the tomb. Everybody heard about the Shroud of Turin? And this is supposed to be the face of that. See, there's his face, eyes right here, and there's the hair, beard here, and you can almost see the mouth. Now, an interesting thing happens. Follow along with me. An interesting thing happens. If you continue to touch any part of that gray screen, the screen changes. And from this screen, it goes red to this screen. And look what happens to the cross. It inverts. Now the cross is upside down, and over here is broken. The stained glass windows break. And down here, the Shroud of Turin, or what once looked like the face of Jesus, is very contorted. And again, do you think they just put that on there by coincidence? Did somebody just come up with it and said, hey, let's just throw that in there? You have to really ask yourself, do they know what they're doing? What's the purpose behind what they're putting in these videos? Remember that the New Age, what they want to call the New Age philosophy, is to teach our children through the use of symbology, symbols. What better symbol than an inverted cross? Remember also in the last session I showed you that as one of the occult symbols and told you that that was the highest form of blasphemy in Satanism, because it means that Christ did literally nothing on the cross. One of the highest forms of blasphemy of Christianity. Those games are pretty bad. But I think, in my own opinion, this is the worst one. The reason I say that is this. I sent off for a copy of this to play it. Now there's Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil 3 called the Nemesis. Resident Evil 2, in my opinion, is the worst one of all. There is even a faction of Christian parents, thank God, that are actually trying to go around with a petition to try to get this and other games like this taken off the market. Praise God for them. I mean, I'm all for it. I think that's what needs to happen. I think that the only way we're going to have any action is when Christians finally get up and take a stand and put their foot down and say, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to go on. But I want to tell you about Resident Evil 2. Now, here's the premise of Resident Evil, the game. Follow with me. There's a virus that's been unleashed in the city. And this virus causes all people, as they die, no matter what way they die, or are killed, and no matter what way they're killed, to come back to life as a zombie. And I mean, it's graphic. And I mean, this screen on this thing is so high resolution that it looks real. And if you play this thing on a huge television screen, one of those big screen TVs, it looks like you're right there. I mean, they have found a way to make animation look like it's real and almost 3D, like it could just come right out of the screen at you. And at one point, the characters We're going about getting killed by car accidents, being decapitated, all horrible kinds of ways. And no matter what way you're killed or you die, you come back as a zombie. A flesh-eating zombie. And your whole goal through this video game is to survive zombie attacks. And you go around in the city and you go through all the streets and everything. You have a gun. You have to shoot them in the head in order to get through. And I mean, when the zombies attack, parents, this thing is graphic. And you see body parts, and you see blood, you see gore. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything to you. I know we got kids in the audience. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything to you kids because this stuff is out there. I mean, it's out there. And it's in plain sight. And this stuff is gory. And I'm going to tell you something. At one point, you see zombies, I think about 30 or 40 of them, coming up toward the screen. Now, what you're supposed to do is shoot them to get out of there. But what I did was actually, I wanted to see what happened. And so I let off the controls. I didn't do anything. I just let off the controls and let the zombies get close to the screen. And I mean, the closer they get, the more real they look. And you see their mouths open up, and you hear them growling at you. You see that evil in their eyes. And they get up to the screen. You know what? If you let off the controls, you actually see them attack you, and you actually, in 3D, see your skin being ripped off on the screen. It's that bad. It's that bad. Again, like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If I were to sit here and go, oh, there's really nothing really wrong with that, or it's just a little bit bad, I'd be lying to you. I'm through with lying. I want to tell the truth, and I want God's people to know the truth and what's behind all this. Here's one of the screens. Look at this. Isn't that pretty? This is one of the zombies right here. There you are with your gun. Now, I'm telling you, though, the graphics in this was just a screen, but the graphics actually like this, I mean, it looks like the hands are actually reaching out to you. And it looks real. I mean, I'm going to tell you something. Unless you've played the high-tech video games now, you don't know what they're able to do with these things. And they can make it look like you're right there in the picture. That's how high technology video has become. Oh, this is good. This is the newest video game out right now, and it's called Temple of the Master. Wonder why?